Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. Today, we are going to talk about my favorite players in the second round of fantasy drafts. Now, normally I just do 3, but in this case, there's 5. So check it out. Here we go.
Listen up. It's time for the Fantasy Maverick podcast, starring the guy who's going to help you win that fantasy championship, Jimmy Maverick.
Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick, and welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast, coming at you from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And today, I don't know if you follow my other social media, but if you haven't, you should go to my my Instagram page, which is at Jimmy Maverick. That's Jimmie Maverick. Start following me there because I post a lot of stuff there. And what I've been doing lately is I have been posting my analysis of each player, and I'm right now through player number 36. So I've done the first 3 rounds of the draft, and so today what I thought we'd talk about is who are my favorite players in the second round of drafts. Now, when I'm talking rounds, I am assuming that it's a 12-team league. So when we're talking the second round of the draft, we're talking picks number 13 through 24, the players that are most likely to go in that range, and which ones are my favorites. So just to give you an idea as to which players we're talking about here, here's the list. So starting at number 13, we've got Nick Chubb, Chris Godwin, Travis Kelce, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, Kenyan Drake, Kenny Golladay, George Kittle, Austin Eckler, Miles Sanders, Mike Evans, and Amari Cooper. So that's the top 24. That's the second round. And what I do in my app, My Perfect Fantasy Draft, is when you go into draft mode and you're actually breaking the draft list down round by round based on the size of your league and your draft position, all the players in draft mode are ranked according to what I call my VORK score. And VORK stands for Value, Outlook, Reliability, and Consistency. Those are the 4 key stats that I look at when I'm analyzing players for the upcoming season. And basically what it does is based on how they score on each of those criteria, they get points. Then those points are added up. That's their VORK score. It's very straightforward. So the maximum VORK score you can get is 100. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that not many players will ever reach 100. It's very difficult to do. You basically have to score perfect on outlook, reliability, and consistency, and you have to be a massive value on the draft board. So it's very rare to see. And it's when you think of it as a score by like 100, it's not like school, right? It's not like they got to score 90 points to be an A-rated player and 80 points to get a B to be a B-rated player, or however you want to think about it like that. The points are hard to come by. The VORK points are hard to get. I make it hard to get. And if a player scores poorly on one of those criteria, like let's say they're a low reliability player, right? They missed a ton of time. They actually get negative VORK points. So the VORK score, it would offset something else that's positive about the player. So what I want is players that have mostly positive criteria at the top of the list when I'm considering who I want to take. So if a player has a VORK score of like 40 points or more than that, that's a good player. I mean, that's a good choice to make. And really, it's all just when you're going round by round on the draft, it's all relative. And you just want players that score the most VORK points. You want to look at the players at the top of the list, because the bottom of the list is all players that have terrible VORK scores. So just focus on the players at the top. Try to get like the top 1, 2, or number 1, number 2, number 3 player off that list in each round. You're going to do great. All right. So, by the way, the minimum score is 0. So even if they have tons of negative criteria, it won't go negative anymore. It used to do that last year, but I changed it. So 0 is the worst score you can get. And again, 0 score players, basically what that means is any positive criteria they have is completely offset by their negative criteria, and they're not worth it. And they're terrible choice. So anyway, I was originally going to do who are my three favorite players, right? I did that for the first round. I did my three favorite players in the first round. But what I found was when I did the analysis and I did the Vork score and looked at that, there's actually two running backs and two wide receivers that are so close in their scores that I'm like, you know what? Either one's good. They're both really good. And that's another thing about the Vork score is if it's just a couple of points, like if one player scores 75 and the other player Vork points and the other player scores 72 Vork points, in my opinion, that's an equivalent player. Don't just take the 75-point player. If you like the guy that scored 72, take him instead. And because it's such a minor difference between the two players, and they're essentially the same. So that's also something else to look at when you're in the draft board. Because I had a question about one of these players that I'm going to talk about today. So let's start out with actually the wide receivers, because two wide receivers scored very, very well on my app. And now I've also been saying that, you know what? Don't take a wide receiver in the first or second round of your draft this year. You don't need to. The position is very deep. But these two wide receivers, I think, are so good that I think they would be worth a second-round pick, especially if you don't have your next pick until a late third round, right? So the person that picks like 11th and then 14th, and then their next pick isn't until the 35th pick, right? That you might want to consider taking one of these wide receivers. That's the kind of situation where I would consider it. But for the most part, I don't think you need to this year. But like I said, I like both these guys. So the first guy is Chris Godwin. And he is the guy that's currently at number 14 on the draft board. And he is going to be the primary slot receiver for Tom Brady. And let's remember that Brady loves his slot receivers. Last year, he gave Julian Edelman 153 targets. Now, I've also talked about my concerns about Mike Evans being a deep ball specialist and how 43-year-old Tom Brady is not going to be able to check it like he used to. I see lots of people that are saying that Mike Evans is going to do what Randy Moss did. But Randy Moss was with Tom Brady in his prime. And, that's a long time ago. Tom Brady's game has changed, and he can't do what he did back in the 2000s. So I'm not. I don't like Evans at all. Actually, he's one of the worst scoring players on this round for a number of reasons. But Godwin, I think, is still great. Right? Godwin. Let's see here. He got 120 targets last year. Yeah, 120 targets in 14 games. I also like the fact that it's a contract year for him, so that's very big for his upside. I have him projected with right now 88 receptions for 1,187 yards and 8 touchdowns on 131 targets for 210 fantasy points. So that makes him my wide receiver 5 for the season. He's valued as the 5th most valuable wide receiver. But he's not without his risks, right? First of all, the risk is you've got to spend an early second-round pick on this guy in order to get him. But also, you've got a situation where he's going to be playing with a new quarterback. Tom Brady is now the quarterback there. He has a Week 13 bye, which I think is also very risky. If you are in a league that starts the playoffs on Week 14, you do not want your wide receiver 1 to be idle on Week 13 when you're jockeying for position, when you're trying to get your playoff bye, or you're trying to just get into the playoffs. You're vying for that last slot or whatever. You don't want to be in that situation. So I would not recommend him in any sort of situation where Week 13 is a critical week for you for fantasy. I've also said that if your playoffs don't start till Week 15, I think I'm totally fine with it. I'm fine with him not playing on the Week 13 because you still have Week 14 for your draft position to lock in your playoff spots and all that. So anyway, Godwin scores 53 Vork points. Again, that's really good. It's hard to score that many Vork points. And if you look at the players, when you're going round by round, most of them score less than 40. There's only a few each round that score really well. So anyway, great choice. I love him. But the receiver I like even more for this year is Kenny Golladay. And he is at ADP 19, so he's an easier player to get because he's a mid-second round pick. And I've actually seen a lot of mock drafts where he falls to the third. Now, if he falls to the third, 100% of the time I'm going to take him. Man, I will take him 100% of the time. I can tell you that right now. I do like him more than Godwin. Let's see here. He is, he doesn't have that quarterback risk associated with a change of quarterbacks this year. It's Matthew Stafford. We know that Stafford and Galladay have a great connection together. Obviously, the biggest risk here is Stafford's health status, right? He fractured his back last year. He missed the second half of the season. But I'm not too worried about it because prior to last season, from 2011 to 2018, Matthew Stafford did not miss any games. He missed 0 games during that time. So I think he's going to be fine. In the 8 games that they played together last year, let's hear, Galladay got 640 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. So you just annualize that out. He only played for the first 8 games together. That's pretty good. That is a great total to have at the end of the season. That certainly is someone who would be a candidate for the wide receiver 1 with those sort of, especially with 14 touchdowns. I don't think he's going to get 14. I have him, let's see here. I have him projected as my wide receiver 6. So he's almost as valuable as Godwin on my projections. And he scores 56 VORC points. So again, 3 VORC points separate Godwin from Galladay. So they're both great. I like them both. They're both great choices. Although, like I said, I'm not sure I'm going to have them on any of my teams this year because I don't think I'm going to spend a second-round draft pick on a wide receiver. So that's where I'm at. So the next up we have on the next level are running backs. And there were 2 running backs, again, that score so close to one another that I consider them virtually equivalent for the upcoming fantasy season. So the first one is Josh Jacobs, who is currently at ADP number 16. So mid-second round pick, relatively easy to get. I like that. Jacobs was excellent in his rookie season, and the whole offense, I think, is going to be improved. They've got improvements there. They improved the wide receiver core. They do have some good elements already on the offense. I think Derek Carr is a good quarterback. I think he'll be just fine. And he is absolutely the workhorse in this backfield. There is no one else he's going to be sharing time with. It's going to be 95% the Josh Jacobs show this weekend. So that portends to high volume. I like that. And the coaches have talked about wanting to get him more involved in the passing game. Now, I have him projected at about 50 targets this year, which is high compared to last year. Last year, he only had like 27 targets. So I'm kind of I think I'm over projecting here as to what he's going to do in the passing game. But when you're talking about these early running back picks, you want guys that catch a lot of passes. It's important because it means that running back will stay involved in the game plan even if they fall behind. With players like Chubb and like Derrick Henry, if their team falls behind, those guys disappear because they don't catch any balls, and you don't want that to happen, especially with an early critical pick like this. But anyway, my concern about Josh Jacobs this year obviously is his reliability. He did miss 3 games last year because of that shoulder injury, so that is concerning given that it was his first year in the league. So because of that, he only gets a mid-reliability ranking on my app. All these other players are high reliable players. So, that's a little bit of a concern. That dings his VORC score, obviously. And I do have him right now valued as my RB11. So he is a low-end RB1. He scores 47 VORC points. Again, that's very good. And I think he's a great choice. Again, I think he's going to be a great choice for fantasy this year. So I like him, but I like this other player just a little bit more, just a bit. And that's Miles Sanders. And Miles Sanders is the easiest guy to get in the second round because his ADP is number 22. So this is a guy you could potentially get available in the third round. I do very much like that, getting him in as my third round pick, as my, if I was to go running back, he would be my flex play. I love that. Again, it's another second-year player. He was very good in the second half of last season, really established himself on this offense, made himself the primary receiver. And so that is great. Now, obviously, the big risk with him is that we've got Doug Peterson as the coach, and Doug Peterson has never given us a fantasy consistent RB1 in his tenure. And they always have multiple running backs. And there is, Boston Scott is still on this, is still on the backfield. So I think it's going to be a timeshare between those two. I do understand they were trying to bring in a third one, like a Devonta Freeman or a Carlos Hyde. That did not happen. That's also very good, actually. That speaks a lot to their confidence in who they have already on the team. And Boston Scott is a late round guy that I very much like too. So anyway, I'm just going to throw that out there. But I do see him having a larger role this year, like somewhere 60 to 70% share of the offense. Plus, he's a really good pass catcher. He had 61 targets last season. That is fantastic. Again, you want those kind of players. You want a player that'll stay involved no matter what's happening with the team on game day. So he is my RB12. So again, just about the same value as Josh Jacobs, and he scores 50 VORC points. So again, the difference between Jacobs and Sanders is 3 VORC points. That's equivalent to me. They're both good, and I like them both. So, but obviously if you're someone that picks early, the one you're most likely to get is Sanders. And I do like Sanders as a second-round pick. I think he's going to be great. So I do like the Philly offense this year. They will be much better as well. So those are the 2 wide receivers and 2 running backs that were so close in their scores that I had to recommend both of them. But there is one guy on this list who I absolutely like the most. He blows them all away on the VORC score. And so this is the guy that I will get every time he's available. And I have him valued as my RB7. So he offers the most value of any player in the second round. And I am speaking of Kenyan Drake, who is currently going at ADP number 18. And I think he is just going to explode on this air raid offense in Arizona. They were so confident in Kenyan Drake that they got rid of David Johnson. They didn't even think twice. They just got rid of David Johnson, their $13 million elite running back 1. And, there are some other players. There is Chase Edmonds on this offense, but I'm not worried about it. This is going to be Kenyan Drake's show. Drake was like a perfect fit from the instant he joined that team. He is absolutely exactly what they're looking for in a running back and what his capabilities are. He's going to get more targets than any of these other running backs that we talked about. Probably in the 70 to 80 range is what he's going to get for targets. So again, that portends well to them keeping him involved in the game plan, even if Arizona falls behind. Let's see here. And Drake was great last year. After he joined Arizona in the final weeks of the season, he was the RB7 after he got traded from Miami. So that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a rock solid RB1 on your team that you can get in the second round. His reliability, top notch, man. He doesn't miss games. His quarterback, huge upside MVP candidate. They're saying that Drake, everybody loves the Arizona quarterback. They love Kyler. They think he's going to, win the MVP this year. He's the front runner for the MVP. I can see that totally happening. He's got a great cast around him. There's, how many stacked fronts are you going to see against Kenyan Drake when they've got DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald out there running routes? They're not going to be able to. So there's going to be things available and open to him every play of the game. I think it's going to be great. He scores 75 VORC points. So he just blows everybody else on this list out of the water. And that's why he's my number 1 choice here. And in fact, he scores so well that I would consider taking him in the first round anytime after Derrick Henry is gone. If Derrick Henry is scheduled to be taken like 7th or 8th, but if he's gone and, you've got choices, you got Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon and Kenyan Drake, who do you take of those 3? I'm taking Drake. I'm taking Drake. He's got the least negatives against him. He's going to be on a high-powered offense. They're going to score a lot of points. It's a fast-moving air raid offense. Seriously, man, he is my absolute favorite in the second round. So there you go. So that's it. Those are my favorite players from the second round. I think next time I'm going to do the third round. We'll talk the third round. We'll talk about who my favorites are in the third round. But thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe. And if you haven't done so already, go to my website, fantasyfootballmaverick.com. That's where you can access my app. It's a web-based app. You can access it on any web-connected device through your browser. And it is going to be continually updated between now and when the regular season starts. So you're always going to have the latest information about players and the latest adjustments to their scores and ratings and projections and everything else. And the best thing about it is that it helps you set up a fully customized draft list in under 5 minutes. And then it breaks that list down round by round. So each round, you're going to know who the best players are to target. So it is my passion project, and it is something that I want you guys to try it in some mock drafts and see what you think. See how it works for you. And if you like it, you can subscribe. And right now in the month of June, it only costs $9.95 for a 1-year subscription, unlimited leagues, so as many leagues as you want. You can set up custom point schedules. It's got player filters to help you remove the riskiest players from your list, so you don't even need to consider them. And one of my new features this year is you can override the filters. Each round, you're going to see all the removed players at the bottom below the list of players. You can restore them into whatever round you're looking at. And if you're in draft mode, it will show you their adjusted VORC score for that round. And so you will know immediately if you come along and like I did a mock draft last week where Adam Thielen was still on the board, but Calvin Ridley was like the highest rated wide receiver. So what I did is I went down and I just restored Adam Thielen onto that round to see how he scored. And guess what? He scored like 20 VORC points below what Calvin Ridley did. So I went with Calvin Ridley. It makes your decisions very easy, and especially when they don't pop into the top of the list, they pop back into the middle of the list. And you're like, all right, whatever. They're not that great for you for fantasy. So anyway, thank you very much for letting me plug that. And like I said, tune in next time. We'll be back again on Wednesday, probably do another mock draft. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I'd love to hear from you. Love to hear you talking about what you think of these 5 players. And perhaps if you want me to tell you what I think about the rest on this list, I can do that too. So thank you very much and have yourself a great weekend, and we will talk next time. See you later, everybody.